Happy New Year, everyone! And what a great time to start learning a new musical instrument or a language. Today, I'm gonna give you 3 transformative tips that would turn your practice sessions from being disorganized to being both fruitful and fun. Coming up, did you know that when I started playing the flute at the age of 25, within 2 years, I was able to reach a level of somebody who plays an average of 5 years, playing both complicated classical pieces as well as improvising. Now you might say, well, at that point, you've been playing piano for about 20 years, so you had prior knowledge. Well, that's true, but what if I also told you that within 1 year, I managed to reach a B1 level in Hungarian, one of the hardest languages in the world, without prior experience. És itt van a bizonyíték, hogy ez egyszerűen hihetetlen. And today I'm going to show you exactly how I did all of that, my method, so you can learn your skill in the most efficient way possible. Drawing from the theory of metacognition, which essentially means being aware of your inner thought processes while working towards applying a new skill. There are 3 stages for a fruitful and effective practice session that you need to checkmark in order to succeed. These are the ones. Let's start with the planning phase. When I say overall practice time, I don't mean that you have to use a timer and make sure you do your practice. But as a general rule, it means that the more advanced you are, the more experienced you are into the process of learning your new skill, the more time you need to invest into it. So, as a beginner, you don't want to exhaust yourself too quickly. And keep in mind that your abilities and your toolset is not as refined, so you do need to rest and let your brain digest what you've just learned. For example, as a piano teacher, I advise my beginner students to practice 45 minutes a day, 3 or 4 times a week. But as time goes on, I do advise them to practice at least an hour or an hour and a half, 4 times a week. Rest is important though, so keep in mind. You need to have a clear idea of what you're gonna do in your practice sessions. I always advise my students to start with something they know pretty well from previous practices, and only then, after about 10 or 15 minutes, move over to new and challenging stuff. It is also important to end your practice with something relatively easy and fun as well, so you can leave with a smile that would last you throughout the day. Also, keep in mind, what you're gonna fit inside your session is also important. Too much is worse than too little, but don't be lazy and make sure you practice enough stuff. Think about what you'd want to achieve out of your skill. For example, if you are a singer-songwriter, you should be focusing on chords and accompaniment patterns. If you'd like to learn a language for business purposes, you should focus on that part of the vocabulary rather than general fluency. Lastly, in terms of planning, set up realistic long-term goals for yourself. It is very easy to find information online about what is expected from a student of 1 or 2 years, etc. So for example, if you study an instrument, you can find sheet music for such and such level so that you can compare yourself to see whether you've done above or below the average. Same thing can be done with language exams or texts. The second stage, monitoring, is the least known and the most overlooked one. If planning was being aware before the practice, monitoring is being aware throughout it. So every time you learn a new concept or new thing, you gotta ask yourself questions. As many as possible. Am I sure I got this correctly? What is this suffix for? Why is this tense there? How does the note system thing work? Why is this up and this is down? Always ask yourself questions, and this way you will be able to recognize patterns faster and understand the inner workings of the skill that you're trying to learn. Any expert in any field that requires a professional, such as sports, sciences, music, etc., has the mentality of striving towards perfection and being persistent in their will to want to know everything. So, while perfection can never be achieved, and that's part of the beauty of music, for example, that it is not perfect, you should strive towards it while realizing you will not achieve it. And that what will make you best in your craft. And now for the last stage, feedback. feedback is received both during the practice session itself and after it. So first thing to consider, who do you get feedback from? When speaking about people, you should only consider criticism and feedback from an individual that meets these two criteria. First, he's an expert in his field, so he's experienced, he knows what he's talking about. Second, he wants the best interest for you. For example, your mom might not be an expert even though she wants the best for you, but your competitor who might be an expert might not want to have the best interest of you because you're competing with one another. Therefore, consider carefully who you get your criticism and feedback from. Just like your diet, it is important to diversify your sources of feedback. Feedback is received not only from people. In fact, a metronome or a drum loop is a good example of that. You can also record yourself and analyze how you sound or how you look afterwards. Another idea is to use ChatGPT in order to check for grammar mistakes or your knowledge of music theory. Lastly, it is crucial to receive the necessary feedback on time, especially when learning and applying a new concept, so that you can lock that brick of knowledge, tuck it into your brain, and save it for later use. By the way, that is why during the monitoring phase I mentioned that it is important to be persistent and to strive to know as much as possible, certainly on the macro level, how deeper things work, so that you don't have to relearn things, and that of course takes a lot of resources, and also that eliminates mental pressure. Once you know that something is securely, for sure, inside your brain, you can relax. Alright you guys, so there were the 3 stages of metacognitive learning: the planning, the monitoring, and the feedback. And if you checkmark those 3 and you have the motivation to learn, then there's no reason you won't succeed. And what a great time to start. Happy 2025 everybody, and I'll see you guys in my next video.